Another Monday, and that means another Golden Eagles Sports Report.
On tonight's show, the men's soccer team played for the Milwaukee Cup. Women's soccer looks to turn their season around. And lunch is on Coach Wojo.
All that and more starts right now. Hi, I'm Caroline Kernan.
And I'm Dan Abington. Perhaps the biggest game of the year for Milwaukee soccer is when crosstown foes Marquette and the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee face off against one another.
Wednesday marked the 17th matchup in what is known as the Milwaukee Cup. Chris Reisner was there to recap the action.
A crosstown rivalry. Marquette versus Milwaukee men's soccer for the Milwaukee Cup. A pair of goals from Josh Kale and Sean Holmes gave the Panthers a 2-0 lead. But the Golden Eagles didn't quit.
So they were quite comfortable for a while. But you saw as soon as we started moving the ball, and as soon as we raised the tempo, we started creating quite a few chances.
Taking chance after chance. An 82nd minute goal for Marquette's Patrick Seacrest provided life. But it would end up being too little too late.
I think the defense as a whole needs a lot to work on. We moved the ball slowly. Our forwards didn't have a lot of movement off the ball, and we just need to focus on the next training and fix those areas, get the ball moving around the back, get more movement up front, and create more chances going towards goal.
Well, we're disappointed, obviously. I didn't think we never really got into the game until we were down. I think every city's got a rivalry game, but this one is a particularly significant one in college soccer.
From Valley Fields, Chris Reisner, Marquette Wire Sports.
And with that, we want to welcome in Nick Galley, one of our men's soccer contributors. Nick, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Dan.
The men's team fell 2-1 in the annual Milwaukee Cup for the second consecutive year and has not defeated the University of Wisconsin Panthers since 2014. Nick, what went wrong?
So, in this matchup, as you mentioned, Marquette has not won since 2014. So, coming into this game already, they have this mental blockade, sort of, and that's definitely not good. All sports, big mental game. So, coming in, you already have that. And then also, Coach Bennett said that they seemed asleep, a little bit tired, like they weren't ready to play. Didn't score a goal till the 83rd minute when Patrick Seacrest put one in on a header. So overall, they just looked really tired in this one, and they weren't able to get the win against UWM.
So Nick, the men's team fell at Seton Hall 2-0 over the weekend, and that marks they haven't won a road game since October 14th of 2017 against St. John's. So what does the team need to do in order to secure a win on the road this season?
I think to secure a win on the road this year, mix it up a little bit. Get some young guys in, get some younger talent in there to get them more experience, get them ready for road games. As you mentioned, they haven't won since 2017. In that span, they have played 5 games on the road, 3 this year, 2 last year. In those 5 games, they've only scored a total of 2 goals. Both those goals, they were scored by upperclassmen. So you definitely want to see some more youth in there, getting some experience, getting some work. And I think if they do that, then the road wins will start coming along. And, that'll contribute to home wins too. So I think that's a big thing for them, just to get that experience.
The Golden Eagles take on in-state foe Wisconsin on Wednesday at the Valley. Marquette is 16-30-11 all-time against the Badgers. What does the team need to focus on going into Wednesday's rival game?
I think their main focus should be strike first. And you're coming off a game where you didn't score any goals against Seton Hall. You're coming off a game where you scored 1 goal against UWM. You want to strike first. They didn't score until the 83rd minute, and that definitely hurt them. You got to win this game against Wisconsin. It is a huge game, huge rivalry, and after this game against Wisconsin, 7 straight games against Big East opponents. So you got to build some momentum here. Georgetown is after the Wisconsin game, and Georgetown has been playing great lately. Back-to-back wins. They look for their 3rd straight tomorrow against Louisville. The thing Marquette doesn't want to do is lose this game against Wisconsin. You don't want to have a 3-game losing skid heading to Georgetown because that's not a good recipe at all. So hopefully they can get this win against Wisconsin, but they got to strike first in order to do it.
All right, Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
Always
you for
some
having
very
me on.
valuable insight. So now transitioning from men's soccer to women's soccer, the Golden Eagles recorded an impressive win against the at the time undefeated UWM Panthers, but were not able to carry their form over into the first Big East matchup of the season, losing 1-0 to the Butler Bulldogs. Here's what assistant coach Nick Vorberg and goalkeeper Maddie Henry had to say following that one.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to start off Big East play with getting a result at Valley Field. I think that's first and foremost, And I think you saw a kind of tale of two halves for us. First half, I don't really think we put our best foot forward, how we want to play. I think second half we played with a little more urgency. That's one of the things that we have to get better at, being more physical, winning the ball, and being stronger in those moments.
Couple missed plays. I mean, simple tactical things that need to get done that weren't done, and I don't think it was a goal that personally I should have given up. It's not one that I typically give up, and I didn't feel good about it. It's just a matter of getting on the same page. It's not one person's doing it and the rest aren't. It's just as a team and as a unit, we need to be figuring out how we can be better together. I think the back line's been really stepping up. Bree and Allie J are really stepping up and playing well together, so it's just a matter of building that from the back and working that core all the way through.
So now we'll welcome in our women's soccer analyst, Maddie Adams. Glad to have you here, Maddie.
Glad to be here, thank you.
So following another loss, what does women's soccer need to do to get back on track?
So they lost against Butler on Sunday. It was their Big East opener. They came out strong, but they came up short. I think that the main thing that they need to focus on is working as a unit. They have had a lot of individual successes. For example, Bree Yeager earned Big East honors this past week, and I think that it's all just needs to come together for them, and they need to work together to start winning in the Big East and then build momentum from there.
So the Golden Eagles have been shut out 6 times this season. Why is their offense just not performing?
Well, if you look at the box scores for previous games in this season, Marquette either has more or about the same amount of shots on goal as their opponents. However, for whatever reason, they aren't finishing. So their offensive movement on the field is positive, but then it's just the finishing that they need to work on.
Okay.
So heading into this week, Marquette plays Villanova on Thursday and then St. John's on Sunday. What's your prediction for these Big East matchups?
So both Villanova and St. John's also lost their Big East openers, so they're all kind of in the same position, which is a way that Marquette can look at this as an opportunity to win these games and then continue winning forward in Big East play and use this as a starting point for more success throughout the season.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maddie.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the women's volleyball team played a few big matches on the road, and we're going to get you up to speed on how they did.
Don't go anywhere. Golden Eagle Sports Report. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Golden Eagle Sports Report. Once again, I'm Dan Abington.
And I'm Caroline Kernan. Over the weekend, the women's volleyball team went 1-1, winning straight sets at Providence on Friday night and getting swept at Creighton on Sunday night. The team now looks ahead as they will host Georgetown on Friday night. That game will take place in the Al McGuire Center, and it will be the team's first conference game at home of the season as they look to build off their 1-1 start in Big East play.
And with that, we want to welcome in Zoe Comerford, one of our women's volleyball reporters. Zoe, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Marquette had a somewhat successful weekend, getting 1 win and 1 loss overall. So what were your overall impressions of the team after their first 2 Big East matchups?
So I thought against Providence, they did really well. They swept them in 3 sets, and then they came out against Creighton, and in Omaha, Nebraska, they lost in 3 straight sets. I was very surprised by this result because Marquette was picked as the number 1 pick in the Big East, so they are predicted to win the Big East, even though they dropped 3 sets at Creighton, which is kind of confusing because I guess Creighton was out for revenge because Marquette was picked to win the Big East, but also Marquette had lost to Creighton in the Big East championships last year. So I think they were also trying to avenge their loss there, but they couldn't do it. And even in the second set, it was 26-24, and they were close basically the whole game. Marquette had a 15-8 lead, and then they lost it. So I don't know if this kind of foreshadows what might happen in the Big East again.
And do you think the travel that Marquette had to do had any kind of effect? I mean, they had to go from Providence, which is way on the East Coast, all the way to Omaha, Nebraska within a day. Do you think that had any effect on the Golden Eagles?
I mean, I definitely think travel time plays a big part in moving from place to place, and then also going from Providence, like so many miles to Creighton. That probably had an impact on why they might not have played as well against Creighton. But it's pretty surprising because Marquette, even though they lost to Creighton in straight sets, they still are number 20 in the rankings. So that's very surprising because they actually went up instead of down, even though they lost.
Mm-hmm.
So far this season, have there been any players that have surprised you?
I think Martha Knavidov, the sophomore libero, she's been having fantastic games. She even had 1 kill, which is interesting, but she averages 4.94 digs per set, which is actually 3rd in the Big East. So she's having a fantastic year. I didn't actually think she would come out and play as well as she has.
And Martha's one of those players that I've noticed who's never even left the court. She's the only libero typically on the floor for Marquette, and she's one of the grittiest players we've seen. So what do you think that kind of says about her?
I mean, she's a fantastic player. She's all over the court. You see her once, she might be up towards the service, towards the net, and then she'll go back and be right at the baseline. So she works it so hard. She runs all over the court. She does a lot of work for the Golden Eagles trying to get those saves for them.
So Marquette prepares to take on the Georgetown Hoyas at home this Friday. What are your expectations for this team in their first Big East home matchup?
So I think the crowd has a big part to play in why Marquette does so well at home. So it'll be interesting to see if the fan section shows up, but it is going to be very difficult because Georgetown has won 2 consecutive games in the Big East so far. They're undefeated in the Big East, and then they also are on a 5-game winning streak. So it's going to be a very difficult match for Marquette to pull out, but they might just pull it out because they have the fans. So Marquette is number 4 right now in the Big East standing. So ahead of them is Creighton, Georgetown, and then St. John's, which is pretty surprising because they are supposed to win the Big East. So it'll be interesting to see if the crowd will come out and try to help them get that win.
And later on in the weekend, Marquette plays Villanova on Saturday, also at the Al. Do you think that Marquette has a better chance of beating the Wildcats, or do you think that that one's going to be a loss?
I think that's going to also be a hard one, obviously, but I think if Marquette can get up ahead and get the lead and keep the lead, then they have a good chance of winning that match. And then also, they've been serving so well. So that's another big thing that Coach Tice had talked to me about is how well they're serving. They've been serving so strong, but I guess against Creighton, it was just too hard because Creighton's returners were just too good at returning those serves. And even this against Villanova, it's going to be very interesting to see if they could keep up that good serving and then keep up holding their leads and not letting those opportunities go right past them.
And you were mentioning earlier that Villanova's libero leads the Big East in digs. So what do you think Marquette's game plan has to be heading into that game? Are they going to have to try to have their outside hitters and middle blockers in the game, or do you think they're going to have to try more dumps?
They're definitely going to have their outside hitters have to be hitting the best they've been all season. Because if Villanova's liberos getting that many digs, it's going to be so hard to get those kills. So Allie Barber, Anna Hawk, and Elizabeth Orff and Jenna Rosenthal all need to have their best games against Villanova.
And it's not like we haven't seen those players with huge days. I mean, Allie Barber last year, the Big East Player of the Year. Jenna Rosenthal was All Big East first team last season. Elizabeth Orff has also been having a couple phenomenal games this season. So do you expect any other players to have important games this weekend?
You know, I'm hoping that Claire Mosier gets to play again. We saw her 2 weekends ago, and she had her first 2 career starts, and she played fantastically because Lawrence Beckman was obviously not on her game. So Lawrence Beckman was out, and they put Claire Mosier in as a freshman. She played fantastically. I hope to see her back on the court as the setter. That would be awesome.
All right, Zoe, great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. Coming up next, we're talking some Marquette madness and the men's basketball team. Don't go anywhere because Golden Eagle Sports Report will be right back.
Welcome back to Golden Eagle Sports Report. The season doesn't kick off until November 6th when Marquette hosts UMBC at the new Fiserv Forum. However, head coach Steve Wojciechowski is in mid-season form after what he did on Friday.
Coach Wojo surprised students Friday by announcing via Twitter that all lunches would be on him at the AMU for an hour.
And students certainly were not shy about taking up Wojo on that offer. John Steppe has the story.
All right, what year are you? What's up, guys?
Building excitement can be a battle.
All right, good. Hope to see you at some games.
For Steve Wojciechowski on Friday, that battle includes fries and ice cream.
So I'll probably get a note from their mom. Good afternoon. Sorry, didn't mean to surprise you.
The surprise? Lunch on Wojo's dime.
Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Thank you for lunch.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's awesome, right?
This is crazy.
People
The goal for Wojo is simple.
interact, buy them a meal, make sure that they know who I am and get to meet them, and encourage them to come to our games.
And students are taking advantage.
I mean, it's fairly heavy.
Yeah, that is a substantial portion.
Yeah, I would think so.
And then wings.
It was
People, it was like rabid animals to the Ben & Jerry's.
They have backpacks open and like throwing things in there. Some people abused it.
Yeah, there's...
More than $6,000 later,
My accountant's not going to be very happy with me. But
Wojo is building hunger for the season.
you have to drink all that milk right now for a picture. No, just joking.
I'm John Steppe, Marquette Wire Sports.
Wow, over $6,000 of food in just an hour. Quite generous for Wojo to feed the students out of his own pocket. So with more info on the mayhem that occurred at the AMU, let's welcome in Marquette men's basketball reporter John Steffi. John, good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
So good to have you, John. There wasn't much of a press release to prepare for this one, so you must have rushed over to the AMU quickly. What was the scene like over there? Were you able to get some food?
I was not able to get some food, but it was absolute mayhem over there. I have never seen people go so crazy over Gatorades and Ben & Jerry's. Wojo frequently commented on the Ben & Jerry's.
Does he have a favorite flavor? Did he mention one?
He did not mention a favorite flavor, unfortunately. I mean, I think that's going to have to be a follow-up question at Media Day.
Absolutely.
But it was quite the scene. Clearly, the intention behind all of this is to get some excitement going in time for the men's basketball season. The issue really hasn't been getting people to buy tickets, but getting the student section to actually fill up, where you're actually having a full student section and not kind of the par-baked student section that there's been a lot in the past few years. So that's clearly the intention. Costs Wojo probably a little more than he thought with that $6,000, but it was quite the afternoon at the AMU.
Yeah, it seemed like it.
So in other Marquette basketball news, an exciting event, Marquette Madness, is only 11 days away. For those who may be unfamiliar with Madness, can you give them the lowdown on what exactly this event is?
Well, it's changed a little bit. So in the past, it's been where you would have a pep rally, that kind of feel. You'd have the player intros. Each coach would say remarks. Wojo last year was on an ATV and then flipped off about 3 feet away from me, which is quite the experience. This year, they're taking out the scrimmages of each team and adding a concert from B.O.B. So throwback to 2010 right here. So their idea here is to make it more student-focused. They moved the start time from 7 p.m. in past years to 9 p.m., really a more student-oriented time. And that's kind of the thinking going into this year. And as you said, 11 days away, so coming up pretty soon.
Marquette Athletics also recently announced a great deal of changes would be coming, so added with B.O.B. What do you make of these changes to this annual event?
Well, as I was saying before, how it really makes it a more student-focused event, and it really changes the focus from kind of this mix of some students, some alumni, to now a true student event. And I think that really will be a little bit of an interesting test because this same structure has been going on for probably 10, 15 years. But I think it's an effort to really generate more excitement. This is a big year for Marquette. They're probably going to go to March Madness, but they have a tough schedule, so they really need to get some wins. A lot of excitement comes with a new arena. You want to take advantage of that. You only get to open the Fiserv Forum once.
So moving from Marquette Madness into a bit of a season preview, Marquette has been predicted to be the second team in the Big East behind Villanova. What do you think they need to do in order to keep up that reputation?
Well, really, I think it's going to be a bit of a test of chemistry because really you look at they have a lot of players returning, but not many of them have played together in games. You have Joey Hauser, it's technically a returner because he played in spring, but he hasn't played in game action because of the ankle injury. So you're really having a mix of how do these players that are all of a sudden eligible fit into the rotation? How do they go from being a very guard-focused, perimeter-focused team to now a bit more of a balanced team? And really how they make that transition there is really going to be determining whether they're second, as many people are expecting behind Villanova, or whether they fall back to kind of where they have been, that middle of the pack towards the back of the Big East.
So moving into recruiting a little bit, you follow that a lot on Twitter and everything like that. So would you mind commenting a little bit on the recruiting scene for Marquette right now?
Well, really the big loss was not getting Nico Mannion. Really a huge investment from the entire staff, especially Stan Johnson, to really get Nico, a 5-star guard from Arizona. But he instead decides to stay home, choosing Arizona over Marquette. So really that's been the latest. Now I would expect a lot more attention going to Seth Lundy and James Bishop.
So now to close out the show, we're going to debut a new segment here on GESR. It's called Down to the Wire, where we finish by discussing and highlighting a piece from one of our reporters. So John, while we have you here, you wrote a great piece on former Marquette basketball player Jim McIlvaine, who recently stepped away from his position as the color commentator for MUBB on ESPN Radio. What do you make of this decision, John?
Well, it really is a family-based decision where The best way that I heard it was his broadcast partner, Steve the Homer True, explained it very well with how he decided several years ago that once the older kids got out of high school, they'd go down to Florida. His wife wasn't crazy about the winters. He honored that obligation. Obviously not easy leaving the men's basketball program at this time with a lot of excitement, but he wanted to honor that commitment, and as a result, he moves on to his post-basketball career. And it's really been the first time in probably 2 or 3 decades, except for a short retirement from the NBA between his retirement there and joining the booth. So it'll be a bit of a new experience for him. He was telling me how he finally has time to snow ski.
And John, reading this piece, there were quite a few funny stories about McElwain included. Did you know coming into this how much of a character he was?
I had some suspicions. I don't think I expected it to be quite as much, and I didn't expect Homer to have quite as much of respect as he did, where he said how McElwain should be on the national stage, and it was Homer's responsibility, and he didn't really carry that side of the bargain to get him on that national stage. So he had nothing but incredibly kind words, not really what I was expecting, but I was expecting some of the character, the crazy eating habits, all of those things.
So clearly no one can replace Jim, but the man who will be filling the commentary booth is another Marquette alum and a former Buck as well. So tell us a little bit about Tony Smith.
So Tony Smith also played at Marquette around a similar time. They weren't technically teammates. They were 1 year off from being teammates, Smith and McElwain. So really, I think Homer kind of provided the best explanation of how Tony Smith was at Marquette, where he said that, he's surprised that shoulders are still good for Tony Smith because he carried that Marquette team so much. So really that speaks to what type of player Tony Smith was at Marquette, a local kid from Tosa East, went on to play at the Bucks, and recently has been working with Fox Sports Wisconsin. So really has that local connection, broadcast experience, a great fit.
Well, thank you very much, John.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. That about does it for tonight. This is your Golden Eagle Sports Report, and I'm Caroline Kernan.
And I'm Dan Abington. See you next Monday, Marquette.